In 1879, Australian outlaw Ned Kelly, along with members of his gang Dan Kelly, Joe Byrne, and Steve Hart, made bulletproof armor from plough moldboards stolen from farms and set an ambush for a police train. But the plan failed, and during the final shootout with the police, the criminals donned their armor. Despite the criminals perishing during the clash with the police, reports of the armor caused a sensation worldwide, likely serving as a prototype for the body armor of World War I. You might wonder, if the criminals were ultimately killed, was their armor truly bulletproof? The answer is yes. Bullets couldn't penetrate their armor. They simply bounced off the thick layer of metal. Most importantly, the armor looked very impressive. The police were baffled when they realized their bullets were just bouncing off the criminals' armor without reaching their bodies. However, despite Kelly's armor effectively protecting his head and upper body, his limbs were exposed, and he was ultimately felled by a couple of shotgun blasts to his unprotected limbs. Kelly lost a significant amount of blood, and the weight of his armor became cumbersome. Each subsequent shot, while not penetrating the metal plates, delivered a powerful blow to Ned's head or torso. When he was finally subdued, it was revealed that Kelly had sustained over 20 wounds. Byrne died from a stray bullet that penetrated his groin through a small gap in the armor. The remaining gang members perished during the final assault on the hotel where they held hostages. After Ned recovered sufficiently from his wounds, he was tried, convicted, and sentenced to death by hanging. Yes, Kelly's bulletproof vest was crude but nonetheless ingenious. The forged iron plates were approximately 6 millimeters thick, even thicker than those of medieval armor, 3 to 4 millimeters. This thickness was sufficient to repel bullets of the time, although blows to the armor caused significant bruising, lacerations, and concussions. Nevertheless, Kelly managed to remain in close combat for a surprisingly long time. Following this incident, Kelly's bulletproof vest instantly became a legend and the subject of numerous discussions in international military circles. The medieval concept of bulletproof vest was revived in the modern world, and such armor became especially popular in the trenches of World War I, where soldiers needed good protection like never before. Germans, perhaps recalling how their ancestors in the Middle Ages were among the first to devise full-plate armor, decided to partially reintroduce it onto the battlefields of World War I. Thus, in 1916 on the Western Front, the Sappenpanzer appeared, the German steel breastplate, and by June 1917, the Allies managed to capture several samples of this protection and conduct research on it. It turned out that the German body armor could stop a rifle bullet at a distance of 500 meters, but its main purpose was to defend against shrapnel and shell fragments. The vest could be worn either on the back or on the chest. Weighing 24 pounds, the armor included a breastplate connected to a German trench helmet. Typically, Germans issued body armor to sentries, machine gunners, and sometimes snipers operating from prepared positions in the trenches. German armor provided reliable protection against shrapnel, but unreliable protection against rifle and machine gun fire. However, such armor did not gain much popularity in the trenches. There were widespread complaints that the armor hindered handling the rifle, and ultimately, it was largely discarded. But after America joined the fight in April 1917, Dr. Guy Otis Brewster developed his bulky body armor in 1917. Brewster's armor had a steampunk-style look. Just imagine if this armor had indeed been incredibly effective. Then, we might have seen suits resembling those of Star Wars stormtroopers in World War II. Brewster's body armor plate was made of chromed and nickel-plated steel and could stop a .303 bullet at relatively close range. Dr. Brewster was so confident in his armor that he personally wore it while being shot at with an SMLE rifle. However, this armor was quite heavy. The massive helmet and breastplate weighed over 40 pounds. In any case, this armor did not make it to the battlefields, because by the time it was being produced, an armistice had been signed. By the way, although the British Army never officially issued body armor to its troops, in Britain, many types of body armor were commercially produced and purchased by relatives from men serving overseas. This armor became available in England in 1916. The collar and vest provided sufficient protection against shrapnel, but could exacerbate injuries caused by smaller high-velocity projectiles that can embed metal squares into the wearer's body. But soldiers weren't just trying to protect their bodies with armor. In this challenging time, they also remembered plated gloves. This gauntlet dagger, sometimes also known as a punching dagger, is designed to be worn on the wearer's head like a glove during close combat. The weapon itself consists of a crudely made blade and a protective glove, made of lightweight sheet steel. Inside the hand of the glove is a crossbar that the user can grip. Overall, its design resembles an Indian pata or gauntlet sword. Although I'm not sure if this counts as armor, I lean towards categorizing it as a weapon. But either way, it's a fascinating piece. During World War I, not only plates but also chainmail was remembered. British tank crews during World War I wore this type of mask. It was made of leather and metal chainmail and was designed to protect the wearer's face and eyes from splashes. Hot metal fragments ricocheting inside the tank as a result of bullets hitting the tank's outer surface. For the Allies, interesting helmet designs were also made for machine gunners, like this knight-style helmet which had a narrow slit for the eyes. It seems as if this soldier simply put on a helmet from a medieval museum. But no, such helmets were indeed used during World War I. Here's another interesting example. This helmet also resembled a medieval one, but unlike the previous one, instead of a narrow eye slit, it had a removable steel mask with 2 openings. Indeed, the First World War was astonishing, but let's go back to the past. In one of our previous videos, we told you about how unique the armor of the samurai was, and compared it to the armor of knights. But there's something we forgot to mention. When all the inhabitants of the Japanese islands became acquainted with European armor, they were able to create their own unique full plate armor, which looked like something from the Dark Souls universe. European armor reached Japan through trade with Spain and Portugal in the 16th century, and this inspired some Japanese armorers to create their own plate armor. Primarily, such armor was intended to protect against firearms, which were also brought to the islands by Europeans. These armors received the general name of Nanban, Southern Barbarian, indicating the foreign origin of the armor. This rare composite Japanese armor includes interesting elements that are not found in other Japanese armors, as well as an original European helmet bowl installed in the Japanese style. The kabuto is essentially made from a genuine caboset helmet used in Europe since the 16th century, and the iron cuirass has the same shape as European cuirasses from the 16th to 17th centuries. It's amazing to see how European armor combined with Japanese culture created something unique. Here are a few more examples of nanban. I would like to tell you more about these armors, but unfortunately, there is little information about them on the internet. In any case, they look simply incredible, so I'll just show a few found variants. And if you know more about these armors, write in the comments. We'd love to read about it. But while we're still talking about Asia, let me tell you about another armor from there. If you thought games overly sexualized female armor, just look at the armor they came up with in India. This Varahi bronze breastplate, and I'll disappoint you right away. This armor was not used on battlefields, probably a big waste. I think it could have served quite well to distract the enemy during combat. Interestingly, this armor wasn't even intended for women. It was worn by male priests during rituals in the 18th to 19th centuries, which is when it was created. But probably this armor partly served as inspiration for the creators of fantasy games, where female armor is depicted with 2 rounded hemispheres on the cuirass, accentuating female anatomy. But did such armor exist in the Middle Ages? No. And if it did, unfortunately there is no evidence of it, and there are several reasons for this. Firstly, women did not participate in wars on equal terms with men, and when they did participate in battles, they mostly wore men's armor. For example, the well-known Joan of Arc apparently wore a typical Milanese armor. But you might wonder, if women had participated in wars on equal terms with men, could such female anatomical armor have appeared in the Middle Ages? I highly doubt it, because there simply would have been no need for it. The thing is, female breasts are quite soft formations, so they are unlikely to press against flat metal armor and cause discomfort to the body. Certainly, the sizes of female breasts vary, but this issue is resolved not by stamping 2 metal hemispheres on the cuirass, but by simply increasing the space between the body and the breastplate without changing its shape. This is how they handled male armor as well, as men's builds also varied greatly. For example, You can look at King Henry VIII's armor and easily understand that it was made for a person with excess weight. Furthermore, it's important to understand that a cuirass is not worn directly on bare skin, as we often see in fantasy games or movies, but over a thick layer of padded clothing. And quite often, over this clothing, a mail shirt is worn. And in such a case, all human contours, no matter how prominent, are greatly smoothed out and do not require detailed anatomical adjustments to the steel cuirass. Therefore, for women, the male armors that existed in the late Middle Ages would have been sufficient. But perhaps you're tired of hearing obvious things and want to understand why female anatomy couldn't have been forged into a cuirass, even just for aesthetics. And the answer is, of course it could have been done, but in the places of these hemispheres, the armor would be maximally fragile and thin, and in the late Middle Ages, the sword was by no means the main weapon of a warrior, especially when his opponent was a knight clad in plate armor. For example, during close combat with knights, foot soldiers used warhammers, with which they could not only dent these hemispheres, but also inflict serious damage to the wearer of anatomically correct armor. This would have turned a warrior wearing such armor into a medieval puppet for a foot soldier with a hammer. So yes, such armor could definitely have been made, but wearing it for battle would have been suicidal. And this applies not only to female anatomical armor, but also to male armor. That's why we don't see such armor on battlefields in the Middle Ages. However, there was plenty of it in antiquity. In those times, the tactics of warfare and the malleable metal such as bronze allowed warriors to wear anatomical armor. And that's why we talked about medieval armor, because if women in ancient Greece had participated massively in wars, I think we would have seen women's muscle cuirasses come down on us. But in any case, from ancient times, we have also inherited other no less astonishing specimens of armor, such as this golden armor of the Scythians, which is over 2,500 years old. These armors, consisting of more than 3,000 triangular gold plates, were found in the burial mound of the so-called Golden Man in Issyk, present-day Kazakhstan. Also, a whip and a sword were found among the belongings. It is believed that this individual was a Scythian prince or warrior, although their gender is debated. However, whoever wore this armor, the person was clearly very affluent, as few warriors of that time could afford to use so much gold for armor. I want to thank our viewer Serkanba for suggesting to include this armor in the video. By the way, another viewer of ours, Martin, shared information about the next armor on the list, a 3,900-year-old armor made from animal bones. Thank you, Martin. It was discovered on the territory of modern Russia in the city of Omsk. As it is assumed, the armor belonged to an elite warrior. Siberian archaeologists claim that it dates back from 3,900 to 3,500 years ago. The armor resembles lamellar armor, but instead of metal plates, bones were used. Currently, experts state that they do not know which animal bones were used in making the armor. But in any case, the armor looks simply stunning. It's interesting to imagine how it looked in those times when it was worn. And if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Also, write in the comments about which armors we should talk about next, and we will definitely thank you in the next video. See you!